Welcome, everyone. This is Higher Discourse. This is the podcast where we talk about the infinite positive possibilities of our shared future and what's holding us back. This is an audio diary episode about definitions. Let's talk about it. So if you heard the last episode, I talked about how these audio diary episodes are really meant to help me manage my time and my schedule a little bit better. It helps me release something that I hope might be of some value and not have these giant gaps in between episodes that get released. So whenever these audio diary episodes occur, they're going to be a slightly different format than the main episodes. So having said that, this particular diary was recorded May 11th, 2022. I was getting ready for work. I was sort of roaming around my house. I was eating. But I felt compelled to grab the recorder and start talking because I had a few things on my mind about definitions, the definitions we keep in our hearts and our minds, and the way those definitions can make us treat ourselves and treat each other. And I just had a few things to say about it. Now, moving forward in the future with these audio diary episodes, the intention is to usually just play them as quickly as possible, not have too many things to say in the intro. And then afterward, after the audio diary plays, to go ahead and leave a bit of an outro at the end explaining why I thought it would be of some value or why I decided to share that particular diary on this podcast. But funnily enough, I actually realized while I was recording this particular diary that it might be useful for Higher Discourse, and I spoke on it within that actual moment. So with that being said, here's the audio. Real quick, I just had it on my mind about being defined by other people's definitions, about living your life by other people's definitions, and about being overcome with those definitions and mistaking them for your own. I think that it's important to be strong in life, but I think it's more important to not let others define what strong means to you. I think it's important to be successful in life, but I think it's more important to not let others define what success is for you. Because as a human being, your happiness is going to be directly connected to your own personal definitions. And if we live by other people's definitions of beauty, if we live by other people's definitions of strength and weakness, if we live by other people's definitions of success, if we live by other people's definitions of value, I think we are going to set ourselves up to be indefinitely unhappy, perpetually unhappy. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong to within yourself want to improve. I think it's most tragic if you yourself aren't the one in control of what that improvement is. If you yourself aren't the one who decides what is and is not improvement. And I think that that's one of the lessons that I've had a hard time learning myself, which is the idea that I can't live by other people's definitions of these words. And I think it's sad, honestly, because in so many cases we end up harming each other because we think we're helping each other, right? We think that some popular definition of strength, some popular definition of beauty is what we should be basing our lives on and forcing upon other people. But honestly, if your own definitions aren't hurting anybody else, then there should be no reason why you should listen to or live by anybody else's definitions but your own. Especially when it comes to being strong, being successful, being beautiful. There's too many people out there, literally billions of people, and each one of them has a different definition of these words. And I think it's so important to learn to disconnect yourself from other people's definitions. Hopefully I listen to this recording when I forget that and need to be reminded, because damn, there's so many people out there ready to tell you who you are based on their definition, what you are based on their definition, and how much value you do or don't have based on their definition. And it happens so easily, so repeatedly, so casually that we end up really demeaning each other, critiquing and judging each other. And then we end up lost in somebody else's world, essentially. Because again, what is the world except our own perception of it? And if we force our perception on somebody else and make them believe it, then we're forcing them out of their world and into ours, where they are less than because they don't equate to some specific definition of value, strength, beauty, or whatever the fuck we have in our minds. And so not only can we accidentally have this happen to us, but we can accidentally do it to others. And I think that's one of the reasons why, this would be a good subject for higher discourse, is because how we treat each other is one of the most important things in our discourse, because you can't talk to somebody or even listen to somebody who's trying to talk to you if there is an adversarial relationship between you. And if you have conflicting definitions of what's right and what's wrong and who's good and who's bad, who's got high value and low value, then the conversation is from the beginning adversarial. Because we can't know how to treat each other if we can't even know how to perceive and see each other. Right? If I'm starting out from some twisted state of reality where you have less value than me, then how am I going to talk to you? I'm going to talk down to you. Right? If I'm coming from some twisted sense of value where, I have some belief that's correct and you have a belief that's not, regardless of the fact that neither of us is hurting anybody, well, then I'm going to treat you like you're bad or wrong. Right? Everything is human psychology. Everything is our perception and our psyche. And I think that it starts with disconnecting those definitions so that we don't necessarily feel that we have to be in that sort of adversarial, conflicting relationship with other people. Then we can talk as equals. And when we talk as equals, we solve problems. We start getting down to the nitty gritty of what's really wrong and our common shared issues. I think how we treat each other is important to our discourse. I think how we feel and think about ourselves is important to our discourse, right? If there's a person in the corner of the room who thinks they have nothing of value to add and nobody will care about what they say, they're that much more likely to stay quiet and not say it. And if they go through their entire lives feeling that way, then they're most likely to die quietly as well, depriving the world of who they are, what they could have offered us. And I think, honestly, one of the major tenets of what I'll be trying to share with people and talk about is how we treat ourselves and how we treat each other. I don't think that's not in alignment with the concept of higher discourse, because it directly affects that discourse. And honestly, we can't get to these higher order problems and these higher order solutions if we're still thinking low and down and low value about ourselves, and if we're still thinking adversarial and conflicting about other people, and if we're still living by other people's definitions and external, reasoning to our own. I'm not saying you should have your own internal reasoning and go hurt somebody and think that it's right just because you say it's right. No, I'm saying if you're literally not hurting anyone by believing that you are successful in your marriage as a, stay-at-home mom, then you're successful in your marriage as a stay-at-home mom. If you feel that you are a successful person financially because you paid off one credit card and you still have 5 more, then you're successful financially. I think that it's one of those things that we sort of live by other people's measurements and wonder why we can't add up. I think it's one of those things where we're always chasing the unattainable because other people will never, ever have the right measurement to ourselves. Everybody is as custom and unique as the brain inside their head, the fingerprints on their bodies, the DNA in their fucking, genes, right? Obviously there's twins and shit, stuff like that, but that's beside the point. Like what I mean is everybody is unique. Everybody. And that means everybody has a different custom measurement of who and what they are and a different greatness and a different genius than everybody else. Einstein had one specific particular kind of genius, and Arnold Schwarzenegger had a completely different, specific, particular kind of genius. And I truly believe that one of the most devastating things we can do to ourselves, and thus our discourse, is to misunderstand our own personal value and to undervalue that own personal value. And then suddenly we go out into the world and either we're being damaged or doing the damage because of our definitions of what should be, of what is valuable, of what is right and wrong, right? As far as who a person is and how a person lives, not necessarily like harming other people, right? Just beliefs and everything else. And it just completely distracts us because again, we're not just out here trying to talk to each other. We're out here trying to manage definitions, manage what things mean. To some degree, on some level, we've got to level up and try to understand that we can't live locked behind other people's definitions. Because when we do feel locked behind other people's definitions, especially when we end up thinking that those definitions are correct and right to lock us behind them, then we start accidentally, unknowingly oppressing others with that same definition, that same limited parameter of what value is. Valuable strength, valuable worth as a human being, like, valuable everything. We end up just locking ourselves behind these walls and thinking it's right. And then once we do that, we end up oppressing other people with that same idea and crushing some people, man, crushing people outright. So part of having this higher discourse with each other, we're going to have to be in some way confident in ourselves. In some way, we're going to have to, on some level, believe in our own value as human beings and our own strength and ability to contribute as human beings. We don't have to, and even what that contribution is, other people don't get to tell you what that is. Other people don't get to say, oh, well, you just fucking, drew that picture, that sketch in your notepad. That's not a contribution to the future. Yes, the fuck it is. You don't get to say that it isn't. That fucking picture shown to 5 people, one of those 5 people on some butterfly effect type shit could easily get the idea and understand that they need to do this or do that. And it could be a seed that gets put into the blueprint that person ends up blueprinting and building in 10 years. Like, everything we do with and for each other has value. And I mean, to quantify that value as less than or greater than is really speaking more about you and your damage than it is about the contribution and the value inherent in the thing you're criticizing. Anyway, it's just one of those things that bothers me. I really hate when people try to define what success is for an individual when it's really up to that individual what success is. I hate it when people try to define what being strong means in this world. I do think it's important to be strong, but I don't get to define what that is. It's strong to cry for some people. It's strong not to cry for other people. It's really about that individual and their definitions. And the challenge is not pushing that definition on someone else and causing an accidental harm to that someone else. Having the confidence within yourself to know that your definitions are right for you, but having the faith in other people to know that their definitions are right for them. And the only universal rule for the both of you is to not harm anyone else with your beliefs. Like, it's really, honestly, in my brain, just not that complicated. But it is something that I do slip into myself and have to try to remember. You know, we have to keep that respect between each other, or we will never get to a real conversation about real solutions. All right, and that's it for this episode. This one was a quick one, relatively short by my audio diary standards. This one was relatively short. I can't say that for all of them, but hopefully you've been able to find some value in it. Hopefully it's been of some use to you. But in the spirit of keeping these particular audio diary episodes short and sweet, I'll see you next time.